For our project, we decided to analyze the market between Anheuser-Busch and SAB Miller in order to determine if the recent acquisition between the two will create negative monopolistic effects or have a positive effect on the economy and the beer industry as a whole. Anheuser-Busch has proposed the acquisition with SAB Miller Company worth $105 billion. The merger between the two would historically be the biggest acquisition of any beer company in the world. In fact, with this acquisition, together the two companies will sell 1/3 of the world's total beers. If the merge would happen, companies would generate a combined revenue of $64 billion, which poses the concerns on how the beer industry would change. Specifically, would a monopoly or a beeropoly happen in the market? Because of these concerns, the Federal Trade Company has stepped in to help with the acquisition and relieve some of the stress around the beer industry. Both companies hold some of the most famous beer assortments in the world, and because of this, Anheuser-Busch and SAB Miller have been working together to figure out the best option, one involving a third party to acquire the Miller Coors portion of SAB Miller.
There are several issues in this case that need to be addressed. First, the current beer market is already concentrated with a moderately high HHI of 2,382. The consolidation of Anheuser-Busch and SAB Miller would increase the HHI by approximately 2,025 points to an HHI of 4,407. The Department of Justice recommends that an increase of 100 or more points in a moderately concentrated market be scrutinized. In addition, the equilibrium in a monopolistic market is generally not equal to the socially optimal or competitive market equilibrium, meaning there could be a deadweight loss in the consumer-producer surplus, a shortage in supply or demand, or prices may be too high or too low. Lastly, there are barriers to entry for new firms in the beer industry, as startup costs such as equipment, distribution, and sourcing costs are relatively high, and the market is moderately concentrated.
We have researched a few different alternative actions that the two companies could take. The first being allowing the acquisition to partake with no divesting and move the industry towards a monopoly. With this, there would be an incredibly strong production with a highly efficient supply chain, and as well, there would be a profit maximization for both companies together. However, having a monopoly in the market is extremely dangerous as it would allow the company to have total market power. With that, you'd lose competition, acquire price fixing across the industry, and have a decreased incentive to produce high quality and new products. If we were to allow the merging between Anheuser-Busch and SAB Miller, but divest the Miller Coors portion of the company into a third party, we would be able to keep some competition in the industry, but maximize profits for the company. We would also allow a third party to create a footprint for themselves in the market. Lastly, if the FTC were to not allow the merger to happen, the beer industry would remain competitive and almost the exact same that it is now. However, if nothing comes from this acquisition, larger beer companies will have the incentive to partake in predatory pricing and push smaller companies out of the market.
We recommend that the Federal Trade Commission intervenes in order to protect consumers and smaller beer companies. With the companies owning 1/3 of the beer industry, the selection of beers will become more heterogeneous across the world. With that, local brewing companies that thrive in their local towns will start to be taken over. Furthermore, in a highly concentrated market, quality of products tend to decrease and consumers are often forgotten. It is imperative to have the FTC demand divestitures and have a third party acquire the remaining shares to assure that consumers are protected from any economic inefficiency. With that being said, we think that the best recommendation would be to allow SAB Miller and Anheuser-Busch to merge, while Molson Coors has the option of either buying out its stake or be sold to a third party. However, if this were the case, the third party that steps in to acquire the Miller Coors part of the company needs to be strong and large enough so that the company can continue to be profitable and keep the beer market competitive.